All right, finally getting into maintenance. So we'll kind of breeze through this. We talked about some of the different concerns. I'll just kind of zip through these. But basically, you're going to start to see the deterioration of the system. It's going to happen in different ways. This is what we call bird bathing and ponding. It's going to be in isolated areas before it's widespread. Surface crusting, this means that it's getting silt, sediment, etc. onto that surface, and we need to address that. Everyone's very favorite thing to pick on about pavers are weeds, right? And I'm going to talk about how weeds do or do not grow in permeable pavers. And then cover joint materials basically at the end of the line, it just needs to be fixed. So there's two different ways to approach maintenance in a permeable system. There's doing a little bit seasonally, yearly, etc. That's called preventative. And that's basically how you're going to approach pervious concrete, pervious asphalt. You're going to stay on top of it. You're going to handle it before it becomes a problem. The other thing you can do with pavers is let it go. Don't do anything. Because that's reality, you know. All of us that aren't in the field doing the maintenance themselves, you might not have your maintenance people come out every year. You might not have the budget for it. You might have the opportunity to maintain it. So that's reality. Well, that's what I'm trying to say. But you can go back and you can fix the system with a permeable paver. You can bring in that vacuum truck at that time and restore the system to full working order. So we'll kind of go through some of these. As I mentioned, with bird bathing, it's going to be in a small, isolated area. And you can see the slower infiltration in those areas. It's often just crusting of that surface, where we need to agitate the aggregate, allow that water to infiltrate a little bit better, and we might just need to clean up that aggregate a little bit in those areas. One of the bigger things that we can talk about is understanding that these are permeable systems and maintaining it in such that your leaf debris, your grass clippings are not maintained or resting on the surface. Okay? Organic material alone isn't going to clog the system, but if we do this preventative step on a seasonal basis, on a daily basis, etc., we'll keep that system in better working order. Bruce brought up mulch. This is going to be one of those key areas as a seasonal concern. So every year the landscape contractor is going to come out, potentially dump mulch right on your parking lot, and spread it around your site. We can just simply use a leaf back blower and remove the mulch from the system without removing the actual aggregate itself. So it's a very cost-effective measure that will keep that system in full working order. We talked about the rotary brush. Ignore the picture, it's kind of cheesy, but you get the concept of what the brush is doing. But it's also going to remove some of that aggregate as it spins through. So although it is a very good and effective measure in terms of maintaining the paver, we now have to top off that system with aggregate again. So a lot of these more extreme measures are going to be a two-step process. The maintenance itself and then retopping off that joint. For larger areas, when we get into parking lots, you know, Bruce kind of showed one image of a walk-behind vacuum. There are also drive vacuums. And all this is basically doing is vacuuming with air. There's no water moving through. It's just pulling the debris up and moving that air, circulating it through, and capturing it in the truck. So this is an opportunity where it's more of a restorative function. We're pulling that pollution, that organic material, that sediment out of the paver themselves and restoring it to full working order. In smaller areas, like we kind of talked about, whether it's residential or a small courtyard, we can actually just use a shop vac and pull some of that aggregate out. We can clean it, or we can replace it based on availability of material. Power washing is something I don't like to see, because ultimately what we're trying to do is keep that surface clean. And yes, power washing it will keep it clean, but we're also basically pushing that sediment down into the system. And the first time, it's not going to be a problem. Second time, it's not going to be a problem. But if this is our continued approach for maintenance, we're now putting more sediment down into that aggregate and providing less room for the water itself to be retained. Now we kind of get into the heavy-duty vacuum. This is what we talk about in terms of a restorative process. We talk about not really knowing the timeline, and I totally agree with Bruce. Every site is going to be very different based on leaf cover, well, what kind of traffic is moving onto from what different surface, tracking different debris. We have projects that have been vacuumed once in 10 years. We have projects that get vacuumed every 2 years. So it really is a very site-specific problem that you'll have to analyze yourself, and then you can start to build your maintenance plan around your site specifically. But the nice thing, as I mentioned, you can skip all those preventative steps and wait and just go to this step and restore it to 100% working order. This is going to be a small video that kind of demonstrates how the vacuum actually really loud. So basically what you're looking at here is the small rotary brush in the front, and then you have the vacuum just pulling the aggregate out. The nice thing about Pavers is you know how effective your maintenance protocol was. You can see after that vacuum moves across the surface if you got all the aggregate and if you got all the sediment. You know right away. You don't really, yes, there is a testing protocol, but you basically have an eye test as well. And that really simplifies things a lot for you. I mentioned replace and restore. How many times do you see a city street being torn up by some level of construction? Whether it's sidewalk or actually in the pavers or in the street itself. As I said, with pavers, hopefully stack them up a little nicer than that guy did, but you pull them up, you reuse the same material, you fix the problem that you had to do, and you move on. And you can do that as many times as you need.